Okay, in this lecture, I'm going to go over the Unit 2 formula sheet, just making sure that you guys know how to navigate that, make sure that you print it out and use it for your quizzes, for your exams, for everything. Should just be something that you constantly go back to. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. And let's see here. We're going to start with where is it that it is? It's in a couple different places. First of all, if you go to Unit 2 probability, you can download it from, let's see here, Unit 2 formula sheet. The other place where it is, if you go down to resources, right down here, and you can click on Unit 2 formula sheet. So we're just going to go ahead and download that, and I'm going to open it up. Okay, so we've got the Unit 2 formula sheet, and you'll notice if we zoom in right up here, it starts out with classical probability, empirical, and subjective probability. And so I try to put all of these together. So that way you'll be like, hey, I got this. They're right there together. I can compare them. It's the equation for it is right here. Number of favorable outcomes divided by total number of possible outcomes is classical. Then probability of an event for empirical probability is the number of past successes divided by a total number of past observations. And then subjective probability, the likelihood probability of a particular event happening that is assigned by an individual based on whatever information is available, which means that you can use empirical plus classical plus whatever other information that you have. You put it all together. It's like, hey, I got lots of things to choose from. I'm going to use it all. Okay. Next, we've got intersection, unions, and the complement rule. And this fun little blue box says, hey, use it when, use it when, use it when, or how it is that you should use it. And then you also have conditional probability and intersection with conditional events. And so just be aware this is the next set. And so it literally goes in, we covered this first, covered this second, and now it's coming down here. It says, okay, if I want to do classical probability and determine the total number of possible outcomes, I'm either going to use multiplication formula, the permutation formula, or the combination formula. And says right down here what it is that they do. Big thing here is permutation formula, combination formula. Those actually have Excel formulas as well. And I'll show you that in just a minute. But the multiplication formula is just right there, you know, the set number of ways to do one thing multiplied by a number of ways to do another thing. You multiply them together, it gives you the total number of possible ways that you can have two different things together. Permutation order matters, combination order does not matter. Okay, so basic probability symbols, this actually goes back to like the second lecture. And then tells you how to use subscript, tells you how to use these. In this little line, it says, given that, A, given that, B. This is a union, so you use it a union, it's or. And then this right here is an intersection, which means and. So yeah, probability distribution, we've got the discrete distribution and frequency tables, how to calculate them technically, but there's videos that go over this as well, how to calculate the mean and the variance. So you can do it like this, you know, this is the legitimate equation, but I also have videos and a workbook that help you to be able to do this by hand without killing yourself trying to do this and get this perfect all in one formula. I like breaking it up into parts so that way you can see all the individual parts, put all the individual parts together and really make sure that you thoroughly understand what it is that you're doing. Uniform distribution. Once again, we have a whole video that goes over this, but basically it says this distribution right here, the probability of every single possible outcome is equally likely between A and B. And the height of the distribution is the probability of any given particular event or any given particular outcome. And so if you've got a range, you know, say for instance, 2 up to 10, the probability of a given outcome would be the 1 over the range. And so the height of the distribution is the same as the probability of any given outcome. So it'll be 1, the height of the distribution is 1 over the range. And then also the mean of the distribution is the A plus B divided by 2, and that'll give you the mean of the distribution. And then the standard deviation is b minus a squared divided by 12, and you take the square root of that. And so that's a really simple way to be able to calculate the standard deviation, the mean. This is, of all the distributions, is the easiest distribution. With the binomial probability distribution, I used to make students calculate all this by hand. Basically what you're doing is you're first calculating the number of possible outcomes that you can have. And then the probability that this is not 3.14, this is the probability of occurrence. And then X is the random variable. So the number of successes multiplied by 1 minus the probability of occurrence, raised to the number of objects minus the number of successes. So you can do this, and by all means, feel free. Or I have an entire video that shows you how to do all of this in Excel, and in my opinion, it's much more effective, accurate. Everything about it is just better. Same thing with variance and mean. The mean is actually really easy. The mean is literally just the number of trials multiplied by the probability of success at each trial. And so, yeah, that's the big thing. You're using combination formula to say, what is the total number of possible outcomes? And then you want to know what is the probability of this very specific number of successes with this many number of trials, if the probability is always the same. Okay, then the normal probability distribution. Once again, this is a really fun equation that definitely does work if you want to do it exactly like this. I also give you guys Excel formulas on how to do this as well. And so don't worry about that too much right now. But then also the Z value. So what I'm saying is, don't look at this and be like, okay, I've got to memorize how to do all this. This math is definitely a little bit more cumbersome than the math that we've done so far in this class. And my goal isn't to kill you with math. My goal is to make sure that you know what to use when and how to use specific tools in order to be able to achieve that. We've already calculated the probabilities of normal distributions before, but we're going to be using different tools to be able to do so as well. Okay, and then the standard normal value is literally just X minus the mean, or the individual observation minus the mean, divided by the standard deviation, and that gives you individual z-scores. So that's how you use all this. I'd encourage you print this out and make sure that you use this on every single quiz, every single exam. It'll really help you to be able to stay on top of that. Moving on, I want to show you guys a couple things. Let's go to Unit 2. Let's download Unit 2 Excel Workbook. Download, accept Unit 2 Excel Workbook. Okay, whoops. Okay, so we got the Unit 2 Excel Workbook right here. And this Unit 2 Excel Workbook, it starts out with a probability tree. Like I indicated to you before, the math is not always that difficult. I'm not saying that the math is super easy, but it's definitely doable. As long as I don't make you do like the actual binomial probability distribution, where you're more likely to mess up because there's a lot of steps in this equation and you're working with orders of operation. I really hate forcing you guys to do that. Instead, I would much rather train you all how to say, hey, you know what, we've got this particular situation. What is it that we should use in this situation, and what are the appropriate tools that we have at our disposal to be able to succeed? So that's kind of my philosophy, is let's teach you guys how to identify what you need to do and give you the tools that you need to succeed in that area. So starting out, this is very similar to the Unit 2 formula sheet. It starts out with subjective, classical, and empirical probability. It says, okay, what are we dealing with? Are we dealing with the probability of subjective probability, where there's lots of things contributing to the possible probability? Are we dealing with classical probability, where you're looking at the number of favorable events divided by the number of total possible? Or are you looking at empirical probability, when you're looking at number of past successes divided by past observations? And so if you're dealing with classical probability, it also shows you, okay, how do you calculate multiplication formula, permutation formula? And you notice what I said there, the permutation formula is right there. And so you don't have to do the permutation with the factorials, although I know you guys have tons of fun with it. I'm not going to force you to do that because there is an easier way. I know you guys can do the math. I just want you to be able to do this very efficiently, because in the real world, that's what they care about, is that you are able to do this very efficiently and accurately, and that you know what you're doing. So yeah, and then complement rule is probability of A is 1 minus the probability of not A. So yeah. So in other words, if you want to find the probability of not getting A, you just do 1 minus the probability of A as well. So that's it's another thing. Next, compound events. In other words, what's the probability of two events occurring at the same time, or two events occurring in general? You know, you've got event A, you've got event B. What's the probability of both of them occurring? What's the probability of either one of them occurring? So on and so forth. Two big words that you got to be looking for is or and and. And you multiply, or you add. So the probability of A or B is the probability of A plus B minus the probability of A and B. And so there's a whole lecture on how to do this and why it is this way. And then the intersection right here, what is the probability of A and B? Especially if it's conditional, or if they're dependent on one another, it's probability of A multiplied by the probability of B given A. But if they're not, then it's just probability of if B is not dependent on A, then it's the probability of A multiplied by the probability of B. So yeah. I don't know why this is. This should say if B is not dependent on A. Oh, this is saying that the probability of B given A is the exact same thing as just the probability of B. So instead of doing probability of B given A right there, just put probability of B, because probability of B given A is the exact same thing as just the probability of B. Okay, then moving on, this is probably what's going to be the most helpful to you, because when you're dealing with different probability distributions, you're saying, okay, first of all, let's look at the data. Is the data continuous? Is it discrete? What is it? What is this type of data that we're dealing with? Is it uniformly distributed? Is it normally distributed? What is it? And so when you get to the data, right away you assess it and you say, okay, based on how this data is assessed, or based on how this data is distributed, we know that we should use a binomial probability distribution, a general discrete probability distribution, a uniform distribution, or a normal distribution. And then if you want to standardize it, you can use a standard normal distribution. And so it says right here, this is when you should use these. Uses to calculate probability when, use to calculate probability when, so on and so forth, all the way down. And so that's how you use this. And I use these decision-making trees to help you guys to make mind maps. To say, okay, I got this, you know, what do I use when? And yeah. Next, this unit is very heavy on vocab. So I'd encourage you guys go through here. Once again, I put all of the vocab, the similar vocab together. I'd encourage you, with anything that's not blacked out, try to go through and add your own example right here. And if you add your own example, I really feel like that'll help, especially if you work with your group to do this. And it'll really help you to be able to get on top of all this information. So that's pretty much how you use the resources for this unit. It is starting to get a little bit more, and then, you know, we're going to be having fun with all this stuff. There's resources all throughout here to really help you to be able to thrive in all that you're doing. But yeah, just be aware that this is all here ready for you guys to be able to use in any way that you want. So